welcome everyone here in person and our online participants to our panel. For our virtual attendees, please put your questions in the chat and we'll try to answer those at the end, time permitting. So we have 3 panelists who have joined us to share their personal and professional journeys with self-advocacy. We welcome Brian, Bryce, and Marty to share their experience as an individual with autism. Self-advocacy has historically been an incredibly important part of civil rights for people with disabilities. Additionally, at the individual level, self-advocacy is often required to access appropriate services. These incredible panel members will talk about self-advocacy from high school into adulthood through individualized support, self-determination, and person-centered planning. We will hear about helpful resources and strategies to intentionally teach and support self-advocacy. Let's start with some brief introductions before we dive into a deeper conversation. So our first question is, could each of you introduce yourself, share when you first learned about your autism diagnosis, and how you responded to this information? Brian, do you want to lead it off?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
You can just take that one.
All right. Yes, I would be happy to do that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brian Peel. I work at State Farm, and I grew up in this community. When I first learned about autism, it was actually another term, and it was pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Although I learned it much later, I was diagnosed at age 7, and also comorbid with attention deficit disorder. I was diagnosed with that. When I grew up here in town. I'm a graduate of Normal West, Heartland, as a matter of fact, and ISU as well. So thank you. And I learned a lot through the supports I received from academic to vocational and other things of that. Self-advocacy became very important to me, and we're going to elaborate on that a little bit later. So.
Thank you. Do you want to hand it on to Bryce?
Hi, I'm Bryce. I'm a student at Heartland and also work here. I don't know when I figured out what autism was, but I know it was really early on after some misplaced medical papers.
That's okay. Thank you. Do you want to hand it on to Marty and she can introduce herself?
My name is Marty. When I myself was first made aware, I was 20, I guess. But when I was younger, it was an autism-like condition, but it was so long ago, you couldn't speak, be diagnosed with autism, so, and I had words, so it was kind of a mess being diagnosed with anything at the time. I was going to another college down the way and had not done well because they refused to offer any services. And then they sent me for testing, and that was when I found out. So.
Thank you. So all the experiences are very different. For our next question, it's another one for everybody. We know that self-advocacy is very important. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with self-advocacy and how that developed for you over time? This time, why don't we start with Marty?
Oh, you started with me.
Oh. Yeah.
This is a tough one because I really didn't have self-advocacy. I mean, I just sort of backed down from everything in many ways and just sort of, if they wouldn't give me things and help me, I would just sort of walk away. And when I moved back from, I guess, from Ireland to when I moved back to the United States and settled back here, I got a local job, and it was just really difficult. And my autism doctor suggested I meet the person who ran Autism McLean, which was a different name at the time. And then I began to sort of learn self-advocacy at that point. But that was only about 20 years ago. And up until then, like I said, I kind of retreated, and which I think is what a lot of people with autism still do. Or if I would try to advocate for myself, it came out as very hostile, very aggressive, almost sort of a violent way. Not that I was violent, but very over-the-top aggressive. So that was my journey, which is very, very different than you would have today, but at times were a little bit different. So,
Thank you. Bryce, do you want to share your self-advocacy journey?
I didn't really self-advocate a lot as a kid. Very quiet and antisocial, so the adults in my life always kind of helped me out. But when I got into college, I started advocating a little more.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll, excuse me, I will add to that. I learned in high school through a good advocate case manager of mine how to appropriately advocate. It took some doing, but until then I really hadn't had much of an opportunity in elementary and junior high to do that because I didn't know how to, hadn't really been encouraged to, except until I had the advocate encourage me to do so and do that for me too. And it kind of, you learn as you go, and that's what I did about what worked. And then I'll get to the parts of what worked for me in a bit, but I had to learn by doing, and that's how I did it in college as well. And the journey is basically one that continues. So self-advocacy is all that more important.
Thank you. Listening to all of your stories just reiterates how important self-advocacy is and how important it is to teach self-advocacy skills. So moving on to our next question, this one is for Brian. What advice would you give others with autism who are pursuing education or employment after high school?
That is a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. Basically, what I would tell you is know your strengths, know your challenges, know what works for you and what doesn't, and reiterate that to people and make sure that they have a way to see that. Above all else, know your diagnosis and be comfortable enough to disclose it. I'll be honest, that took me some doing because I didn't know how to. And also make sure that you have the right advocates on your side, be it academic, vocational, whether it's a case manager, a job coach, employment specialist, that will advocate for you and that will teach you how to self-advocate.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Our next question is for Bryce. At the high school and college level, what barriers have you faced navigating the system to get the support you needed?
I would say they have the services, but they didn't really tell me where to find them or who to talk to. So I'd have to look for them on my own. But I had my parents and my grandparents helped me find those services and help me navigate through them to where I could get the accommodations I needed.
Thank you. And our next question is for Marty. Marty, what advice would you give those supporting autistic individuals who are seeking post-secondary education or employment?
wow. First of all, there's two things. Don't tell your autistic child that they can do anything they put their mind to, because none of us can do anything. I mean, know the strengths and the weaknesses of the child and their interests. If there's so many people out in the typical world, if one of those people that are in high school said, I really want to be a doctor, some of the high school students should look at and go, oh God, no, please. And it works the same way with an autistic child, and I don't think it's unkind to go, oh God, no, please. But at the same time, don't just assume because they have autism they can't do anything. They're going to be, shredding paper for the rest of their lives. People with autism have made, obviously very good career choices that have, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, all the way down to someone who, runs a paper shredding company. Or Austin, Jackie's son, who makes candles. He likes to do it. He's very good at it. The candles are a great product. And I'm not selling the candles, by the way. That's out there. But that's what he does. That's what he does for a job. It's something he likes. So absolutely make sure that you know what they're doing, and not that you know what they're doing, that you know that their skills and their weaknesses. Is the job that they want to do going to require extra training? What I had always thought I wanted to do was become a scuba diver. And that required extra training, and I was able to actually go and do that. But there may be some people with autism who would not be able to do that, and some who would be really sort of a low skill. They could do something just so much better if that's what they chose to do. So you absolutely have to know a realistic strengths and weaknesses of the person with autism. And that child with autism may move away from you if they're able. And you can't keep them constantly, you can't keep them for the rest of their lives. They may need and want to move away. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind, because a lot of programs for people in college and graduate school that have supports are not found in Illinois. So, you have to wrap your mind around that starting when they're younger. So, and that's about it.
That was wonderful. Thank you. So we've talked a little bit about, and this next question is again for everyone, a little bit about your support systems, but can you explain a little bit more about your support systems, how they helped you reach your goals, and what strategies or supports were most helpful? Who wants to take this one away? Okay, Marty, thank you.
My support system now are basically where I reside. It's Jackie Mace, it's Dr. Chuck Hartzell, it's Michael Mace, even Austin Mace to a certain extent. It's assistance with things that I need, things that I don't understand. And even if it's a stupid question, they may laugh and go, oh my God, but here, and they'll tell me, but the sort of the laughter puts it in my head that it was kind of a funny question, and next time I'll be able to do it. And when I used to have a job here in town, and Jackie went in with a local organization to meet with management to go over some supports that they were refusing to give me, and we got those in place, and they worked. When I went to undergraduate school, I had to go to the University of Arizona that had a program, and that program was helpful and got me through school. So at various times in my life, I've used various support systems. Growing up, that support system really was non-existent. But now it's the people I surround myself with, and those people know the supports available in the community and assist me in guiding through those, which is really vital. Knowing the supports in your area, what's available, and how to navigate that has been a godsend. Did I answer that?
You did. Thank you very much. I think that's a very important point, too, to realize that your supports change over time, that they might look different when you're younger as you age and get older. So, and then as your goals change, too. I'm going to move next to Bryce for this question. You spoke a little bit about your support systems with your family. Could you tell us some strategies or supports that were most helpful for you?
Well, after my mom found out that me and my sister were on the spectrum, she looked a lot into researched a lot of the programs and research studies to help us advocate through school. And then I use a couple of the programs here at Heartland to help me advocate to my teachers and my employers so I can get the accommodations and the services that I need.
Thank you. And Brian, could you explain your support systems and how they helped reach your goals and what strategies and supports were most helpful?
Well, I would be glad to add to what Marty and Bryce said. Growing up, though, mine were basically speech and language, and I had parents that advocated and worked with me at home. But also, when I got to high school, I had a good advocate, a case manager that helped get me the accommodations I needed. I had extended time on exams. I had a separate exam area. I could have note takers that extended into Heartland. And it's now, Student Access and Accommodation Services. I had those in place. Those did help me tremendously with the focus. As I moved on to ISU, I had similar, although to a different degree. But as I graduated and I got into the working world, I learned by doing and through trial and error, basically what worked and what didn't. And I learned what I needed to advocate for. So I got Mark First and an employment specialist job coach. I am on their board of directors, by the way. And they're here actually right now. Jack's out there. I got basically the right people to help me get to my current position. I'm at State Farm in administrative services in part of distribution. And it has been a tremendous experience for me in the working world as far as competence booster and finding out a lot of what I never imagined doing. So those were the kind of accommodations that I received that helped me, and I would encourage anybody else to do.
Thank you, Brian. And that leads right into our next question, which is for you as well. Can you tell us a little about your employment experiences by describing the different positions that you have held in that process of leaving one job and moving and transitioning to the next? Because that's a big process.
Yes, and that is that is a big process for anybody, but especially for people on the autism spectrum. And the reason that it is a process for people on the autism spectrum is because of that transition and change that it involves, going from one experience to another. And basically what that is going to involve is that's going to involve a lot of people, more so than other people might do when they're changing jobs. What that has been like has been varied. And I will tell you, I've had various sectors of employment, from retail to food service to healthcare to hospitality. I have worked Jewel Osco. I have worked Heritage Health. I did their laundry. I worked for Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. I did their laundry. And I have done a variety of experiences to get to where I'm at now at State Farm. What that involves is learning your strengths and weaknesses, but what I would encourage people to do is have the right advocates on your side. Make sure that the pros far outweigh the cons of changing employment, and that you not only consider the job, but you also consider pay, work environment, benefits, and overall morale, because some things you won't know until you start there. But when you interview, make sure you get some kind of accommodation, even if it's a tour of the place, and make sure that that is what you're willing to do and able to do to jump ship, and make sure that you have all the accommodations you need, even if you can gradually pull them away and still have that layer of cushion of support. And I found that to be tremendously helpful.
Thank you. And on to Bryce, this question is for you. How do you navigate your time between work, leisure, and school? Because you have a full plate.
So I work 2 jobs and I go to school full time. So I'm not the best with time management, but I have been getting better with setting up schedules so that I can still find time to be with friends and loved ones outside of the campus environment. It's a process. Don't really want to do it, but I do it anyway because how else am I gonna move on?
Thank you. Our next question is for Marty. In your life, you have had many different work experiences. What was the best job you had, and why was it the best role for you?
I have to narrow it down. I have to actually give one. That's sort of the problem. I think I'm like everybody. I've had numerous jobs, and some things about them I liked. Part of the problem was that I might like the work, but I couldn't get along with the people because I didn't understand them. One of I worked as a chef and a dive guide on board a scuba vessel in the Dutch West Indies. Fantastic job. Love water, love diving, the whole work. But so in that regard, the job itself was great. But the people, I had no idea how to interact with these people. And there were no supports available. And I was ready to throw people over the side. And it's a small boat. I was pretty sure they were going to be missed. I worked as I ran a security company in Los Angeles, and trust me, we were busy. It was in many ways, it was great until, I had to deal with people. So I suppose the best job all around was probably here when I worked for a firm here in town, because I had supports, I knew the job, and the people were told I had autism and were kind of cognizant of that when they worked with me. So all around, I would say that was the best job. But in terms of what I liked to do, it was at the bottom of the ocean.
Thank you. That puts a lot into perspective. As we wrap up, before we start opening up questions to the audience and our virtual attendees, our final question for everyone is, can you share a proud moment you experienced while self-advocating?
Proud's a tough question, but
It is.
I would say not only getting my high school diploma, but also getting my associate's degree from Heartland here and getting my bachelor's in general studies from ISU. I'm going to add that before I switched over majors, I was special education major with the intention of teaching. But I found that that really was not what I wanted to do. And I found that other things would be a better fit. So that, to me, to this day, that makes me proud because I've learned a lot in that time, and I think society as a whole has caught up. So I'm very proud of that. The awareness is there, but I also think the acceptance of autism is more so than it was 20, even 10 years ago. And I think hopefully that's a trend that continues. So that's my proud moment.
Thank you. And Bryce, would you like to share your proud moment you've had experienced while self-advocating?
I'd probably say that mine was fairly recent. I switched majors back in October. I came to Heartland to study history. I'm a terrible writer. And my mom had me take a welding class last fall to have me try a different field of study. I didn't think I'd be any good at it. I'm actually kind of decent. So I ended up switching majors, and I'm having a much easier time in the industrial technology than I was in the writing and history. I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I bet that was a big challenge for you to take on, and good for you. Way to go. And Marty, could you share a proud moment you have experienced while self-advocating?
This is really actually a really difficult question. Kind of like Brian, I suppose, and Bryce. I originally started out doing something very different. I was studying criminological research in the field of sociology, and wanted to be a profiler, which at the time was not a big deal. There weren't TV shows made about these people and stuff. They weren't FBI agents. They contracted out, and I thought this would be a great job. Because you kind of worked on your own, analyzing crime scene photographs. And then there was a moment that just, I realized that this was just way too much darkness. I did not want the rest of my life to be this dark. So I sort of self-advocated for a change in major and direction of which that I was going in. Otherwise, many of my proud moments, actually, that didn't revolve so much around employment as just self-advocating with people who I suppose in some ways are trying to use me, and finding your backbone to stand up to them and self-advocate and go, yeah, no, jackass, we're not doing that. So recently I had kind of a proud moment in that respect, but that really wasn't employment related. But there's proud moments come, and then there's sometimes a proud moment will fleet by, and you'll be like, oh crap, I missed that. And then you're kind of stuck. But I suppose also getting off the ship before I threw somebody overboard, so I didn't hang in the Dutch West Indies, which would have ended abruptly. So.
Marty, that's a great point, because self-advocacy does happen in all aspects of our lives, from day to day to changing employment, to changing our degree, what we want to do at school. So self-advocacy can be something very simple, or it can be a big change too. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. We now have time to open up questions to the audience and to our online virtual attendees. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I was supposed to have a mic runner, but I'll do it. It's okay. I'll get you in a second. Ooh, there.
So there are certainly a lot of misconceptions about life on the spectrum. Is there any aspect to life on the spectrum that you wish other people knew?
That is a very good question. Well, basically, take a walk in our shoes. It's not always easy, and it is frustrating, it is annoying, it is irritating sometimes, because of so many changes and the way life is unpredictable. And it's easy to think that, oh, it's just so unfair. It's not, I see what I think everybody else is doing and can do that. And I'm just like, well, yeah, but we only see the finished product. We don't see everything that goes into that. We don't see the behind the scenes stuff. We don't see the backbone conflict of things. And sometimes we forget that, but we also think that, oh, well, they're not on the spectrum, so, oh, yeah, it must be easy. Well, I've come to find out, and I can tell you from experience that that is not always true. And I think that misconception, another one that they have, is that we lack empathy. We don't lack empathy. We just show it in different ways. And I think sometimes we show too much, sometimes we show too little. a lot of times it just builds in us and we don't always know how to deal with it. But when we catch ourselves, we find that it's easier to channel it into appropriate energy. And people need to understand that we're not, we're not being bad, we're not, melting down, but we also need to advocate and, filter ourselves like everybody else, because obviously that's what society does. So basically, I think the misconceptions are that we lack empathy when we don't, and that people need to take a walk a mile in our shoes to know what it's like. So I would encourage people to do that.
Oh, goodness. We had one up here.
Hi. So we talked a lot about the importance of self-advocacy in education and in employment. What are some strategies or conversations that you've had success with self-advocating in your personal social relationships, either family or significant others? Some accommodations you found that have been helpful, some conversations that have been helpful, just to help another person kind of who loves you, who cares for you, to do a better job of doing that for you.
Take to heart what they say, even if it's not what you want to hear, even if you know in your heart of hearts they're right. Do it, anyway. It's still beneficial, Listen to their tone. Some people aren't going to be as nice as others. That's okay. I mean, it's we're all human, but I would say basically don't compare. You don't know what people are going through. Learn to ignore. Learn that pick your battles. Some things just aren't worth it. Choose what you can do and advocate for that, but make sure that it's a battle worth fighting for. And if it is, have the right people on your side, but make sure that collectively it is worth the investment.
As an educator, I work with a lot of students, and I've had a lot of students that I've worked with has had autism. As a person that loves to promote advocacy, is there anything that you would suggest that might make it better for you? Because one of the things you guys said about your jobs is know your strengths and weaknesses. Where do we draw the line on advocating for you to try a task or trying to figure out if it's a strength or a weakness to promote you to go in that direction as an educator?
So you're asking how to know the student's strengths or weaknesses, is that right? Or did I misunderstand that?
Let me try to put this as a simple way. As an educator, I tend to encourage students to do everything and try to put a positive spin on a lot of different aspects of students' learning and trying to figure out their own path. How do I do that without, with consideration of their strengths and the weaknesses, into not sending them into a position that they don't want to be in?
Well, in some areas, are you with the local school district? You work at a corporation. Well, in one of the local school districts, I don't know if it works this way in every one, but the autistic students go into an alternative, or not an alternative, a specific job course. Is there anybody here from Unit 5? Unit 5 has that, they send them to field. and you
Vocational
work.
training, is that what you're
Vocation
thinking of?
training at field.
I know of it.
Yeah, and that's a mandatory kind of thing, but it's very, you don't really pick and choose. One of the things that I recommend to educators is finding out if the students, this is going to sound really weird, and I talk about this a little bit in the keynote, but for instance, with me, I went to school with the son of a serial killer. Absolutely obsessed with serial killers. Weird thing, I understand. But I wanted to as I researched them on my own, I wanted to parlay that into an occupation to try to figure out how these people can be stopped and what can be done. So Bill Gates, or let's take Elon Musk, has absolutely come out and said he's on the spectrum, he's been diagnosed. He was obsessed with computers. So he was able to parlay that, and I don't know if he had any help or advocates, into becoming, well, now he's the third richest man in the world. Bill Gates is suspected to be on the spectrum, the same thing. You can sort of, in many cases, look at what their obsessions are, and is there anything we can do with that? There was a girl in, I want to say New Hampshire or Connecticut, absolutely obsessed with tearing paper. She was just obsessed with paper shredding, and her family were her supports, and they started a paper shredding company for her. And it's huge now. It does like nearly the entire city. And, they have trucks, and basically they take it to her, and she just sort of has this industrial paper shredder machine that's really exciting for her. But, so try to use their obsessions, and again, if their obsessions are, I don't know, sticking peanut butter and jelly up their brother's nose, you're not gonna be able to do much with that. But a lot of times, we had one kid that was absolutely obsessed with bugs at one time, and I sort of kept saying, because he'd carry him in a jar around his neck, and God, I thought I was going to kill him when he dropped him. Why, if he was that interested in bugs, could he become an entomologist? Because he was very intelligent. Why not sort of guide him in that position when he's, 7, 8 years old, and he's got this intense interest in bugs and can tell you all about them? NASA is Spectrum Central because they had people who realized, oh my God, this guy is a little weird, but he's really into planets. So let's scoot him over there. And so that's why a lot of times you see these guys with, astrophysics doctorates that seem a little spectrumy because probably they are. So my advice is if you can, find out their obsessions, and through those obsessions, you're going to find strengths. And if there are weaknesses with those obsessions, then try to work on those. If the weakness is math, you're probably going to need some of that to figure out planetary alignments and is our comet's going to hit the Earth. But I guess that's about all I could say is try to work with their obsessions, and within those obsessions find their strengths and weaknesses, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I'm really sorry. I tried.
That's wonderful advice, Marty. Brittany, do we have any? We're going to switch it to online real quick.
Yeah, we do, absolutely. So, and kind of in the same lines here, Sydney from online asks, what can teachers do to better support students in developing self-advocacy skills?
I would say encourage them, but believe in them. Have a can-do attitude. But basically have the wherewithal and the knowledge and learn as you go experience to encourage them, because the kid is going to follow your lead no matter what. They're going to, and what I mean by follow your lead is they're going to emulate your demeanor, your attitude, and whatnot. When educators raise their expectations a lot of times students, not always, but a lot of times students will rise to the occasion. But that does not mean that the intrinsic motivation shouldn't be there in the student, because let's be honest, the effort has to come from the individual. But it's going to help when they have the right people on their side, and it's going to be very beneficial for them to push themselves to try new things that they never thought they could do. And it's going to not only encourage them, but also be on the notion, too, that life is a journey, not a destination. And that's one of my favorite quotes. So emulate what you want them to learn from you and go from there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So we have one more from online really quickly. Tammy asks, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self to help you now?
Not everybody understands autism. Not everybody's going to get it. And you're kind of automatically going to be seen as the weaker person. And it's really important to just try to make your voice heard, to make your desires heard, and to find your backbone at a really young age and not be pushed around. I had teachers and administrators, I had a whole bunch of people in school pushing me around, and they were bullies. And to find a backbone and sort of report that, and to work around it, and to say, look, this isn't working for me, I think is really pretty important. Because you're not lesser, and you're not somehow inferior. You're different. And that is really the takeaway that has to be drummed into a child's head. You know, you're not the same as everybody else. You are different, and that's okay. Everybody's different, but you know, you've got to come up with your backbone and have people teaching you from a very early age how to self-advocate and assisting you in doing that.
And you also want to, first of all, is this thing on? First of all, you also, adding to what Marty said, you want to, in self-advocacy, you want to make sure that people are not only patient but understanding, okay, there we go, doing things, but when they have a can-do demeanor, it's going to impact you more so than a not, even though they may not say they don't believe in you. But attitude is everything, and I've learned that in not just academics and vocational, but I've learned that in life. Different, not less, adding to what Marty said. And that's, I see a lot of social media memes that I share along those lines, but it is important that that we practice and emulate equality in that regard. So that's what I would say to do.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to move over to this side of the room. Is there any questions? Excuse me, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Hi, I have two. I have one for Marty and then one for everybody. So I've heard a lot of people say autism is different in girls than it is boys. How is it different for you self-advocating as a female with autism?
I'm honestly not sure that it is. When I went to the University of Arizona for the SALT program to get my undergraduate degree, there were more boys in the program than girls. And it appeared as though girls could sort of mask it a little bit better in one-on-one conversations. I'm not sure that that is completely true. From what I saw, many girls tended to do things in groups, and maybe that group dynamic was hiding that. I'm not real sure. I've always been a very solitary person, and most of the boys in the program were very solitary people. But I have heard that girls fly under the radar a lot more, and I don't. In my experience, I'm not even 100% sure that's true. It wasn't for me anyway. You know, I was just kind of ignored like everybody else. So.
Okay. My second question is for everybody. What advice would you give a parent of a child with autism on how to self-advocate better?
Well, I can speak from my parents' experience. Believe in them, know them thoroughly, inside out. That can be hard to do, but be involved in their lives, help them with their homework, be their advocate for education, teach them to self-advocate. But if you feel a placement is not right, don't be afraid to say so, go to bat, because a lot of times there's trial and error involved with placement. I speak from experience. And if one learning environment is not the best, see how you can integrate them into the regular environment as much as you can, depending on their level of functioning. But teach the kid how to self-advocate by believing in them and telling them that yes, they can, regardless of how difficult it may be. And just know that the race of life is not a race. It's not a contest. It's a journey. Like I said, it's not a destination. So make sure that they know that and that they truly believe that, and that they can emulate that in their daily lives.
Okay, this row right here.
So my question to you guys is the following. In listening to you guys, I don't want to make an assumption, but the first question is, was your entire academic career in the public school system? Did you have access to autistic-centric transition programs, that sort? Because nowadays there are so many, as you were just saying, there are so many different ways that people can be taught now. Montessori, therapeutic days, alternative programs. So in your guys' experience, what was your experience in the academic world?
Well, I went to public schools until I went to college, and then it was the University of Arizona. I went to a culinary school in Ireland. I guess that was private school that focused on obviously culinary skills. There were some supports there, but Ireland, they're a little behind the times. And it was not a thing at that time to do any sort of transitions for anything. It just didn't exist. So, I don't know if I don't know anybody that was homeschooled at the time or anything like that, but no, mine was completely in public school.
I've always been public school. In the beginning, I've been seeing counselors and programs to help me transition through school, but I had a teacher in 5th grade who had pulled me out of the services, and my mom had fought all through middle school to get with the district to get me back in. Middle school was a big struggle because I did not have the support to transition. And then high school, they finally got me back into services, and the teachers were able to help me. transition into college.
I'm going to echo Marty and Bryce's experiences, Bryce especially, because elementary through junior high, I mean, I kind of was just, you know, I don't want to say marginalized, but I got by. My grades were fine. Math was difficult. I got tutors, but I didn't really learn self-advocacy until 8th grade exactly, and then high school, because I'll be honest, what supports were available. I mean, obviously the times were different, but not much was known about autism. In fact, you could have on an IEP speech and language impaired, you could have, you know, whatnot, like pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Now the DSM says that that's, what is it, autism spectrum disorder, something like that. But it's not, and I don't know if that's for funding purposes or if that's for treatment as well, but I'm going to assume it's a combination of both. But as far as you know, things like that, secondary ed is really when it happened more so for me, and especially post-secondary. But there's always things to learn, so that's what I encourage people to do.
I just have one more question, and you may have to think back a little bit. I have students that are more severe autism, and I have a lot of parents who say, I don't see this at home. Was there ever something that was like a trigger for you guys when you were in a different environment that would cause any sort of behavioral, besides throwing some off a ship, that, like, was there a trigger for that? Like, it didn't happen at home, but it would happen in the community or at school or anything like that?
She's talking about triggers. I think, I'll tell you one, routine changes. And that's one of the key things of autism. Like, I could give an example. You know, somebody could be sitting playing video games, doing a great time. Somebody comes and turns off the lights, say it's time to go, and oh boy, trigger a meltdown. You know, that kind of thing. Or they say, well, we got to do this. They change this. And then you all of a sudden get so frustrated and panic, like, you know, it's just like, you know, well, we had this planned. Why don't you make a routine plan and stick to it? Well, I find myself saying that a lot, and then I say, well, things happen. We have to make adjustments. I mean, I know that, but that doesn't make the anxiety any less. Sometimes it's just a matter of doing and accepting circumstances. And the whole COVID thing, there were things, you know, I'm a very active person, and when I couldn't do that stuff, I tell you what, part of me loved it, but part of me hated it. And it was really, it was a big thing. So I want to go meet this person. Oh, no, COVID, no. And then, well, this person's not vaccinated. That person's not vaccinated. They don't mask, whatnot. And then when the CDC lifted some of that, you know, we could do that, but there were still things that we would plan, and then they would get derailed because of COVID. And part of me was okay with that, but another part of me was so disappointed. But I guess back to the trigger, those kinds of things trigger that. But a lot of times you can see red flags. And if you can find a way to deal with those red flags and anticipate, maybe you can find coping strategies, even if circumstances don't change.
Thank you. Real quick, how much time do we have left? So probably time for one more question. Who's the lucky one?
Yeah, this question's for everyone. So what kind of techniques have you each used to manage stress or anger in a healthy way?
In a healthy way. So we're ruling out murder and stuff like that, correct? You know, a lot of times, in fact, I went looking at, we're at an autism conference, there's nobody's selling like chewy things. So, and because I know that things like this, I get stressed and I usually chew on things. So those are things that I use to minimize stress and frustration. You know, it varies from what I'm going to be doing and things like that. But you know, I'm here today, and part of the time to relax before I give another speech, I'll just put on headphones and music and really just calm down to keep my frustration level very low. And that works for me. Now, if I turn on a radio and somebody blasts out, I don't know, Snoop Dogg or something, that's probably going to send me over the edge. But it's very specific what I can do to minimize frustration. And sometimes I just can't minimize it. It boils over and I'm in a rage, or I'm in tears because I could not manage it. And you'd think that I would be able to. I've had, a lot of years of practice, but sometimes I just can't. But in general, they're, using water, music, things to chew on, weighted blanket, things like that. It just depends upon the situation, I suppose. You have anything, Brian? Bryce?
Just for like general day to day, I carry small items in my pockets to fiddle with if I'm stressed. Use breathing techniques. For more serious situations, I tend to shut down, but if I'm around somebody I'm comfortable with, like a friend or a trusted individual, I'll go hang out with them. I might not talk to them, but I'll open up a little bit when I calm down. I find it very helpful.
Adding to what Marty and Bryce said, I'm way too reliant on the iPhone, unfortunately, and I think this culture has us desensitized to that. But sometimes it's the stimulation factor, but reading, the written word, can stimulate the mind, and sometimes interacting with people is both energizing and nerve-wracking. Needless to say, something like this 25 years ago would have made me nervous. But granted, experience helps in that area. I find, and I try to do this as much as I can, even cat naps, napping when you can, makes a difference. Trying to get that energy back when you're constantly on the go like I am. And it's very helpful to have stimulation, but also to have that downtime, because let's be honest, you need to recharge and you need to come about. But I find sometimes now, I'm not saying hand flap or leg rub or something like a younger person might do, but I am saying too that sometimes what I'm doing right now, fist clenching, can help, but sometimes things you're not even aware of. And if you can do that and not bother anybody, that makes a difference. So.
Thank you. I apologize that we have not been able to get to everybody's questions. These panels are so powerful, and I think everyone agrees that we could sit here and have a conversation with these three incredible people all day long. So please, let's thank Brian, Bryce, and Marty for taking their time to answer all of our questions.
I'll be outside. If anybody still has questions, I'm going to be out in the lobby, and I'm happy to answer them if you still need to ask them. So we just...
Thank you. Enjoy your day.